The following program is brought to you by the Buns the Cat Foundation. At the Foundation for Buns the Cat, we think birds are jerks. It's also brought to you by Absolute Boredom. And this time we're going to update you on some projects and check out a new game that's just been delivered here on the show. Hey there! So it's a rainy day here in Seattle for those of you who are actually watching, who are maybe working from home or whatever. But that has not stopped the ability to keep on purchasing large arcade games. So this game is kind of special because I started collecting arcade games in probably around 1995, and like a lot of things that happen in life, I got divorced and I had to pare down my collection, but this game actually stayed with the collection. And so it's now, when I bought it at an auction in Winston-Salem when Nirvana was still alive, right? That the interesting thing about this is when I bought it for $150 in an auction because nobody wanted these in the 90s. But now this particular title is one of the top tier arcade games that people desire and want because there's very, very few of these left for some reason. I think just because it was a hard one to convert to anything. So this game stayed with a family member for years and years and years after I had to sell off my collection, and now they sold it back to me because they don't really play it and don't need it anymore. So I'm really happy to have it back in my collection, number one, because it's really important to me. I'll go into more of that, I guess, later on. And two, that it is ridiculously rare, this game now. You just never ever see these anymore. So I have my handy dandy box cutter. Let's take a look and see what it is. So you can see that it is a Space Harrier, Sega Space Harrier, and they made 3 versions of this game. They made a stand-up version. This is the sit-down version that doesn't move, and a deluxe version where you sat down and moved around. This game is weird to me because it was actually translated to all sorts of home consoles, and it was pretty popular, but the arcade game was actually not that popular. And there's a game called Enduro Racer that if you go and you peel up the artwork on the side of Enduro Racer, you'll find Space Harrier artwork underneath of it because they made too many of these cabinets. And they never really, I guess they had to put Enduro Racer in the cabinets just because no one was really buying Space Harrier. But anyway, let's keep on unwrapping it and we'll take a look. Okay, while I struggle here with bubble wrap and fast motion listening to Benny Hill, let's talk a little bit about the history of Space Harrier. Space Harrier was released in the arcades in late 1985 and was designed by Sega's Yu Suzuki. Suzuki is responsible for many Sega classic games, including Outrun, Afterburner, and Virtua Racing, just to name a few. The hardware is very similar to other Sega pseudo 3D games of the era, including Hang On and Enduro Racer. Many of the games after Space Harrier would be an evolution of this dual 68000 processor-based hardware, including games like Power Drift and Galaxy Force. Space Harrier's innovative graphics and on-the-rail shooter gameplay made a pretty big visual splash in 1985, and many home versions of the game for systems and home computers of the time period were released. But it really wouldn't be until the introduction of 16-bit computer systems and game systems like the Sega Genesis in the late 80s and early 90s where home users would finally get decent translations of the game. Sega would offer Space Harrier to arcade operators in 3 different cabinet styles: a traditional upright cabinet, a sit-down cabinet, which is a bit shorter than the traditional upright, it's just like the one that I have, and a deluxe sit-down version where the cockpit would move with the player. I couldn't find any hard data on Space Harrier production numbers, but my guess here is that it's nowhere near the production run of either Sega's Hang On or Outrun of the same time period. Space Harrier machines can be difficult to find today, selling for anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 between collectors. The high end is for the deluxe sit-down version, if you can find one. Despite the possible lower than average production run of the game for arcades in 1985, the legacy of Space Harrier is not up for question. Sega would continue to produce home system and arcade sequels throughout the years. Space Harrier was even released a few years back as part of a collection of games for the Nintendo 3DS. Beyond the bright, impressive graphics of Space Harrier, we should also point out the incredible music. Sega composer Hiroshi Kawaguchi, which I probably mispronounced, is the creator of many fantastic Sega soundtracks of the time period, including the legendary soundtrack for the game Outrun. Mondo actually released the soundtrack to Space Harrier on vinyl just last year as a testament to its enduring musical appeal. Okay, so I've had like a day, essentially, since I shot the last video there, kind of to assess the game and figure out what's going on with it and what would need to happen. The first thing I did was just kind of clean it up a little bit, and then I took the monitor out. The monitor was just god-awful, filthy dirty. I don't think the monitor has ever been pulled out of this game. Needs some capacitors. I was able to tweak it to make the brightness a little bit more palatable. It looks okay. There's a little bleed here and there. That's going to have to get fine-tuned. This is a 20-inch proprietary monitor Sega used in some of their games from the era, so some of the parts are rather difficult to find, especially the flyback and things, so we want to tread lightly when we're rebuilding this monitor. Obviously the cabinet damage will be addressed, and we'll deal with that when we get there. Parts withstanding, since the virus situation right now, parts are kind of hard to get at a reasonable speed. The up and down pot in the controller was totally dead. I didn't have a 5K pot, but luckily the volume pots in this are exactly the same part, and it seems like the pot that somebody had used for the up and down was a replacement pot, not a very good one, kind of haphazardly put in there, so I sacrificed the right channel volume. So right now it's just playing in mono until I get a 5K pot, and then I'll have stereo again, but the game is playable and totally working. Space Harrier brings up a pretty interesting story from my childhood. When I was younger, we would spend the summers at a place called Ocean City, Maryland, which is kind of a big beach resort area on the peninsula of Maryland and Virginia and Delaware. It's actually quite pretty. My grandparents owned some real estate there. Never an outdoorsy kid, not an outdoorsy adult. I spent a lot of my summers playing arcade games instead, especially at a place called Playland in Ocean City. And I remember when Space Harrier came out, and it was a sit-down version, and I played it, spent $10 or more trying to finish the game, because you can just keep on continuing it, and I won the game. And I went and met with my grandmother and my parents and explained to them that I had just blown $10 or more, it may have been like 20 bucks, to beat this really cool game. And my grandmother just lost her shit. She was so mad about this, and my mom was just like, well, you know, that's what she wants to do with her vacation, that's what she do with her vacation. And I always remember how mad my grandmother got, and it just actually made me love the game even more. It made me love arcade games even more at that point. I was probably like 12 at this point, if that old. Anyway, when I bought this in 1996, 97-ish, I guess, I found out something interesting about this exact Space Harrier is indeed the one from Ocean City, Maryland, that Playland owned. There was a bunch of material on the bottom of it claiming its ownership to Playland. So this is the game that made my grandmother yell at me, not just the title, but the actual game, as far as I can tell. So not many people get to own one of their childhood games that they actually got to play on, and I get to, and I can't wait to fully restore this game. You know, Space Harrier is just such a classic. And well, that's it for the Space Harrier, and I'll keep you updated as far as the restoration goes, but we need to get some of these other projects done first. So there you go, Space Harrier. Other than the new game arriving, I've made only a little bit of progress with the major projects. The Arkanoid, I was able to mask and kind of paint some primer on it and finish some of the more finite damage that had been done to it. So I got some paint today from Amazon, and I should be able to start getting that, but I really need the artwork for it eventually. The coin door also is a mess, so I've started kind of working on that. And the centipede overlay on the Mini, almost done with it, and then I ran out of materials and time. So next time I do a video, I will give a full update on how that went and show you the process of putting a new control panel overlay on a control panel. So other than that, that's pretty much it. Stay safe, be nice to everyone, and take time for yourself, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!